The Top 10 Horror Films of 2023 by Adam Black. Number 10, Thanksgiving. Directed by Eli Roth, written by Jeffrey Rendell and Eli Roth. After a Black Friday riot ends in tragedy, a mysterious Thanksgiving-inspired killer terrorizes Plymouth, Mass., the birthplace of the holiday. Picking off residents one by one, what begins as random revenge killings against some of the shoppers who were there for that Black Friday event are soon to be revealed to be a part of a larger, sinister plan. Will a band of targeted teenagers uncover the killer and survive the holidays, or become guests at his twisted holiday dinner? 16 years after making a faux trailer for the movie Grindhouse, Eli Roth expands it into a full feature film. It is a funny and gruesome horror slasher with great practical effects on display amid its series of cool kills. Roth is at his best here, creating some genuinely suspenseful murder sequences. While the film is a great, unpretentious tribute to 80s holiday-themed slashers, it does work as a warning against American consumerism. Lovers of splatter movies will not be disappointed. Number 9, Sick. Directed by John Hames, written by Kevin Williamson and Caitlin Crabb. As the pandemic steadily brings the world to a halt, Parker and her best friend Mary decide to quarantine at the family lake house alone. Or so they think. This is a slasher allegory for recent times. Taking the lockdown measures and the quarantine rules of 2020 as a catalyst for a targeted killing spree offers the writers and director ample opportunity for social commentary on a particularly crazy and confusing period. This is done with wit and humor and never sacrifices tension or suspense. There is some inspired direction throughout the film, especially the use of backgrounds, showing the audience the killer lurking in the shadows, unbeknownst to our protagonists. This is a fast-paced slasher sure to become a classic as well as a time capsule for the pandemic of the early 2020s. Number 8, Night of the Hunted. Directed by Frank Calhoun, written by Frank Calhoun and Glenn Freyer. When an unsuspecting woman stops at a remote gas station in the dead of night, she's made the target of a psychopathic sniper with a secret vendetta. To survive, she must not only dodge his bullets and fight for her life, but also figure out who wants her dead and why. The suspense never lets up, punctuated by scenes of gory kills, which will satisfy any horror hound's appetite. The philosophy of the killer hits upon some present-day topics, including mass shootings being the product of political zealots and the corporate injustice perpetuated upon the working class in America. It ends with the main motivation of the killer still being a mystery, like a lot of the real-life horrors we read about today in the news. The film is carried by a remarkable performance by Camille Rowe, playing the heroine. Her character deals with an interpersonal betrayal caused by her and reaches a spiritual redemption by her bravery and fortitude in the story's climactic finale. Because this film includes some pandemic commentary, it would make an interesting double feature with the movie Sick. Number 7, Knock at the Cabin. Directed by M. Night Shyamalan. Written by M. Night Shyamalan, Steve Desmond, and Michael Sherman, from a novel by Paul Tremblay. While vacationing at a remote cabin, a young girl and her parents are taken hostage by 4 armed strangers who demand that the family sacrifice the life of one of their members to avert the coming apocalypse. With limited access to the outside world, the family must decide what they believe before all is lost. It will keep you engrossed with its emotionally complex characters and its high premise that is handled with a seriousness by director and cast. Dave Bautista gives a career best performance here. This single-location thriller creates a pressure cooker of tension among its tight cast. With the fate of all humanity in the hands of one small family in a cabin in the middle of the woods, with few sources to back up the claims of the captors, it forces the audience to ask themselves what would they do in that situation, what would they believe. Its conclusion will no doubt prompt as many questions among viewers as it answers. That's why Knock is one of the most thought-provoking genre films of the year. Number 6, Influencer. Directed by Curtis David Harder. Written by Curtis David Harder and Tesh Godakonda. This film tells the story of Madison, a popular social media influencer who's having a lonely and uneventful trip in Thailand despite what she tells her followers on Instagram. While reflecting on her boyfriend canceling on the trip, she meets CW, a fearless and enigmatic traveler who offers to take her to some of the most Instagram-worthy locations. Together they share authentic meals and drinks with locals, discussing the differences between Madison's online presence and CW's lack of one. After showing Madison all the amazing sights, things take a sharp turn when CW brings her to a surprise location, a deserted island, and leaves her there. CW then steals Madison's online identity for her own profit. But a person this popular always has someone looking for them. It is a psychological thriller for our times about the illusion of reality online and how one's identity can be hijacked when it's only backed by a grid of ones and zeros. This is done by a carefully constructed plot and the captivating performance of Cassandra Nod playing CW. It'll keep you hooked until the final climactic twist. Number 5. It Lives Inside. Directed by Bishal Dutta. Written by Bishal Dutta and Ashish Mehta. Sam, an Indian-American teen, lives in an idyllic suburb with a conservative mother and a simulated father. Sam's cultural insecurities grow due to her estranged friend Tamira, who mysteriously carries around an empty mason jar all the time. In a moment of anger, Sam breaks Tamira's jar and learns what's inside, an ancient Indian demon. It kidnaps Tamira. Sam then must band together with her parents and a sympathetic teacher to save Tamira and trap the demon again. This is a classical supernatural horror thriller with effective fright scenes and a fantastic monster design, showcasing an underrepresented folklore. While being of a particular culture, at the heart of the film's theme is a universal concept, a teenage girl's self-esteem. The protagonist tries to get away from her cultural heritage until she confronts this monster and learns that her culture will provide the solution to the evil. She goes from self-hatred to self-acceptance to self-sacrifice to save those around her. It features one of the most chilling endings of the year. Number 4. The Boogeyman. Directed by Rob Savage. Written by Scott Beck, Brian Woods, and Mark Heyman. Based on a short story by Stephen King. High school student Sadie Harper and her younger sister Sawyer are reeling from the recent death of their mother and aren't getting much support from their therapist's father, Will, who's dealing with his own pain. When a desperate patient unexpectedly shows up at their home seeking help from Will, he leaves a terrifying supernatural entity that preys upon emotionally hurt people. This film squarely falls into the trauma monster subgenre, where the evil is born from an emotional trauma and feeds on the suffering it causes those impacted. Here, it is done well throughout and into a satisfying final act. While keeping the monster mostly in the shadows, this film offers an atmospheric dread as well as effective jump scares. When we finally do see the monster, its appearance is truly frightening. Behind all the scariness, there is a solid family drama about grief here, and it is backed by strong performances by the trio playing the targeted family. Number 3. Talk to Me. Directed by Danny and Michael Philippou. Written by Bill Heinzman and Danny Philippou, based on a concept by Daley Pearson. When a group of friends discover how to conjure spirits using an embalmed hand of a Satanist, they become hooked on the new thrill like it's a new party drug. Until one of them inadvertently contacts the dead mother of our protagonist, Mia, which sets her on a course of supernatural terror. The backdrop of the story invites the viewer to witness the domestic problems of modern-day teenagers. It could be looked at as an allegory for teen drug use, grief, and loneliness. It is a gripping story with shades of the classic tale, The Monkey's Paw. It is as empathetic as it is frightening. It transcends its dismembered hand B-movie concept with originality and pathos, while containing gore and scares aplenty. It concludes with a clever and chilling ending, which lets us see the world from the other side. Number 2. When Evil Lurks. Written and directed by Damien Rugna. When brothers Pedro and Jimmy discover a demonic infection has been festering in a nearby farmhouse, with its proximity poisoning the local livestock, they attempt to evict the victim from their land. Failing to adhere to proper rites of exorcism, their reckless actions inadvertently trigger a pandemic of possessions across their rural community. Now they must outrun an encroaching evil as it corrupts and mutilates everyone it is exposed to, and enlist the aid of a wizened cleaner who holds the only tools that can stop this supernatural plague. This is one of the most hard-hitting and visceral horror films in recent years. Its fresh take on demonic possession as a contagion opens up the possibilities for some spectacular death set pieces, of which it delivers the goods with some great practical effects. Also, no punches are pulled as we witness more than one child being killed. However, its surface-level terror goes deeper by exposing the weaknesses of humanity on both personal and systemic levels. When Evil Lurks is made with a ferocious energy that alone could have carried the film for its full runtime over any plot discrepancies. After his previous film Terrified, and now this one, another horror hit from this writer-director will place him among the greats of the genre, like Carpenter, Romero, and Argento. Keep an eye out for this name, Damien Rugna. Number 1. Lockdown Tower. Written and directed by Guillaume Niclot. The inhabitants of an apartment building wake up one day to discover that their building is shrouded in a black fog, which disintegrates anything that passes through it. There is nothing getting in, and there is nothing getting out. If you want to see the worst humanity can do to each other, then lock people up with little resources in the way of food or supplies, and without any chance of obtaining more. Almost immediately, the residents of this tower form fractions among themselves, mainly based on their ethnic cultures. Soon thereafter, some groups resort to thievery and violence against each other to survive on what little is left. Some of the scariest scenes in this French film are the few title cards that appear throughout the story to indicate the passage of time. The first one reads 5 months later, and a later one reads 2 years later. With the appearance of the first card, the viewer is forced to wonder how can they survive like this. After the second one, the viewer has to settle in for a sense of doom. And as we see by this time, residents have been hunting their neighbors' pets and using the recently deceased for food. When these sources of protein grow thin, one group breeds women for sustenance. Writer-director Niclot strings together sequences that stimulates the audience's imagination and respects their intelligence. It is a film that's more intellectually terrifying than it is visceral. The final scene is haunting and heartbreaking because it provides a shimmer of hope amid the darkness they live in. As for the darkness outside, there is no explanation given for its origin and no concept given for its solution. It seems like it is their fate that it will consume them all in time as it begins encroaching into the building. Lockdown Tower may not be a fun film to watch, but it is not one you will soon forget.